Hi everybody, and welcome to Nerd to the Third Power, your one-stop shop for all things nerdy and awesome. I'm your host and master of ceremonies, Dr. Gonzo. With me, as always, in this epic quest of awesomeness is our resident anime goddess, the one, the only, the beautiful, the Cat. Cat, how you doing?
I am doing just dandy.
Okay, and in our other co-pilot's chair is our resident English person, Skyblaze. Skyblaze, what's up?
I'm still alive, which is more than I can say for some of my co-workers at the moment.
And I think the less we know about that legally, the better.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and Brian, you're looking kind of lonely over there in the correspondence corner.
Yes, I did, but I survived. I was the survivor.
What did we have correspondent Hunger Games or something?
If we did, I wasn't aware of it. Skyblaze, did you throw that together?
No.
Oh man, I got a lot of explaining to do tomorrow, don't I?
Yeah, you do. Okay, all right. Well, we'll just fire up the Vita chambers and regrow John and Brendan then. Okay, but we got a fun show tonight. We got Linkara joining us tonight to discuss Eric Stevenson's keynote speech that he gave a few weeks ago about the state of the comic book retail industry. So that's gonna be a lot of fun. And excuse me, getting tongue-tied here. So yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun and very in-depth discussion. Gonna be a lot to talk about. So since we got a pretty good show for tonight, we're gonna just jump right into it, starting with Ask a Geek, and we got a couple questions here. All right, first question here comes from excuse me. First question here is for Kat, and it's funny enough, it's from a Christine.
Oh. Because for those who don't know, that's my actual name.
Yeah, and she wants to know. Excuse me. She asked you, as a Jurassic Park fan, what are your thoughts on the recent announcement of the upcoming Jurassic World?
Dude, I didn't even get to read the announcement. Dr. Gonzo put it on my damn Facebook like today, and I haven't had time to read it because I literally just walked in the door. I will say that if I had to make something up, though, off the top of my head, I would say that I am having mixed emotions because we all know that it's for the movie, right? The movie?
Yeah.
Okay. Because we all know that the second, but especially the third movie were really subpar. So we hope that with a new director breathing life into it, really quality work should probably get done, but it's a franchise that really only needed one movie. So I guess I am looking forward to it, but part of me just knows that there's so fine a line between awesome and totally unnecessarily awful.
All I'm gonna say is, if they give T-Rex feathers, there will be rioting in the streets.
Even though, that's part of the problem is that we've made so much, leaps and bounds in our knowledge of what dinosaurs actually were since the first one came out. So we know that a lot of dinosaurs had feathers and stuff now, but we absolutely can't have that in a movie because it would destroy our image of the T-Rex.
Reality is unrealistic.
The T-Rex and the Velociraptors. Oh my God, we're being chased by a chicken! We should make that kid's line in the first movie hilarious.
Seriously. You can't take it seriously with the feathers because our image is way more scary and reptilian, and it's a lot less scary to us with feathers. So, we'll see. We shall see.
Okay, this one is from Robert, and it's to all of the gamers on the show. What was the first video game you ever beat? I think the first game I remember clearly beating was Kirby's Dream Land on the Game Boy, and I was 6 years old at the time. And I remember it being like just a life-changing moment for me. Because I'm kind of showing my age here. I grew up in the days when Nintendo hard was the rule and not the exception, and so games were made ludicrously difficult to keep you playing. I realized that Kirby's Dream Land was not one of those games, but like the idea that you could actually complete and finish a game and that there was an end to a video game was a very new concept to me. And so that I remember being kind of stunned to see a credits roll after beating a boss. Let's see, Skyblaze, you're a bit of a gamer. What was the first game you ever beat?
A little bit. She says, looking at the 5 consoles currently perched under her TV.
I don't know what you have.
Yes, you do.
You never provided me with like an itemized list. I know you have video games. I don't know what quantity or which specific ones.
I can provide you with a list if you want one. Anyway,
Well-
the first one I clearly remember was beating Super Mario World on the SNES. I remember it because I actually got my dad to come in and take a picture of the victory screen at the end, because I knew full well that the people at school would not believe me otherwise. Because this was the game that generated a lot of buzz in my school, and everyone was like, "Oh, how far have you got? Oh, that level was such a pain," and blah blah blah, and all this sort of stuff. So
it was the water cooler discussion topic of the day.
yeah, it was what was cool school. It was a water cooler discussion topic for a month. Bearing in mind that where I grew up was not particularly wealthy, so you had to kind of squeeze a lot of playability out of your games because you would usually only get like a couple a year. Especially in the late 80s, early 90s, when where I lived was going through a massive recession. But anyway, and I remember
Thatcher!
what?
I said Thatcher!
Yeah, quite. But politics aside, I very clearly remember kind of sitting in the chair in front of my TV with the controller in my hands, shaking. You know, like I'd just run a fucking 200-meter sprint and won a gold medal. You know, that sort of that kind of feeling that you get when you've just done something incredibly hard and you've made it.
And you don't quite believe that you've done it.
Yeah, and
You're
just kind of
waiting for-
shaking with adrenaline. I'm kind of like, oh my god, Dad! And get him to take a picture and show it around at school, and everyone's like, oh, gasp. So yeah, that's the first one I can clearly remember beating. I'm pretty sure I beat other ones before that, but they must not have made as much of an impression on me for some reason.
Okay. Brian, what about you? What's the first game you remember beating?
The first game I ever remember beating was Super Mario Bros. 2 for the NES. And I remember beating that in an all-nighter sort of play session. I die, start over, and keep going. And I was so excited. I don't even remember the time. It was very late at night when I finally beat it. I was just excited. Like, I beat this game! Yes! Awesome! I'm great! It took about a day to realize that it was a dream. That inside the game, the whole game was a dream.
Oh, I thought you meant that you beating the game and did it.
No!
No. I actually beat it, but I was so excited. I was like, I beat this game! Yeah! But, I mean, I should have said, it took me a day to realize that the ending to the game meant that the whole game was in a dream from Mario. And I felt a little bit disappointed after that. But at the same time, I was like, whatever, I beat it. I'm out. Yeah, I talked like that when I was a kid.
Okay. And Kat, I'll throw this question to you too, just to see what answer you produce. What's the first game you've ever beaten, if any?
I've never beaten a game. not a video game. I've beaten tabletop games and stuff, but I never.
It's okay, Kat. We're here for you. We won't judge you. Well, they might. I won't.
Although we're kind of a little exasperated that you bought a PlayStation 3 just for Netflix.
Look, a guy was selling it for $150 with a bunch of games, and my friend and I were going to end up like being roommates, and when she was going to give me some money, and we were going to basically split the cost.
And it's a good Blu-ray player, so meh.
It really is. It's a great Blu-ray player.
It's also it's got an amazing upscaler for regular DVDs.
So,
Okay, are we getting paid to shill for Sony now?
Well, you brought it up. I felt like
It's a good console. What do you want from me?
Bitch, I might be.
Did we sign a licensing deal that I didn't know about?
Bitch, I might have.
Okay. Next question here comes from Sam, and he asked me, what are some strategies I'd like to see some video game companies implement that have been implemented before? I'll tell you something that I'm kind confused as to what as to we haven't seen it. I would like to know why, with so many consoles having motion controls, the Wii, the PlayStation Move, and the Kinect. I'm wondering why we're not seeing a lot of re-releases of old arcade shooters, like Time Crisis or House of the Dead, or you know what I'd like to see, what I'd like to be able to play again. Anybody remember the Lost World Jurassic Park light gun game from the arcades about 15 years back?
I do, but I can tell you why we probably shouldn't do that. Because you don't need fucking motion controls for those games. All you need is a light gun. That's all you need. Fuck that.
If it worked for the NES, it can work for us, bitches.
Well, the thing is, like, we've got, it's very easy to turn these controllers into light guns. You've got the Wii Zapper, you got the fucking assault rifle thing that Sony put out for the Move. I guess for the Kinect, you just make hand jerky motions. I don't know. Fuck the Kinect.
Pachoo, pachoo, pachoo,
But it's not like the technology's not there. And I'm like, these are games that were awesome and that everybody remembers. Why aren't we bringing some of these back? Put them on the Virtual Console, the Xbox Live, whatever. There's an untapped mine here. Let's do it. A strategy I'd like to see brought back. I would like to see licensed games be built around gameplay and not just the license. I want to return to the heydays of like DuckTales and Chip and Dale when the game came first and the license came later. But I'm not a big, maybe that's why I'm not a big video game executive, is because I have ideas like that. So, next question is for Kat. It comes from Joseph, and he asks if you can recommend any erotic but not necessarily smutty manga.
No, I can't because I don't read any. I'm sorry, I don't. And to be honest, they don't necessarily publish a lot of that in the US. You can get it. You have to get it from a small publisher. You'd have to order it online, or find it at a convention. Or you'd have to be finding it illegally online.
So, in other words, Manga Fox will probably be your best bet.
Yes, but, I try not to promote piracy, so...
Well, if it's not published in the U.S. and it's not licensed, then...
It's not legal. It's not legal. I can't emphasize enough that scanlations are illegal. You are distributing it online. That's not legal. Anyway.
That's a debate for another day.
That's not a debate.
I think she just won the debate. I don't know.
Only because we have a lot of show to do and I don't have a lot of time to belabor the point.
Also, it's not a debate. It's the law in every country. Every country. Except for probably China, because they don't care.
Next question here comes from Danny, and it's for all of us. And he asks, what are our thoughts about adding in minority characters for the sake of having a minority character? Example, making a character gay or trans just to fill a role. So, Kat, why don't we start with you on this one?
Okay. It's kind of a really, really tricky thing to talk about, because we've been hearing a lot more of this lately after the release of Frozen, and people were complaining that it was yet another whitewashed Disney cast when it's obviously based on, a European folklore, and you can't really say, well, why aren't they black? Because there wouldn't have been any black people there at that time.
Also, can I just say, you know what I say to people who say that there are no minority Disney characters? Pocahontas, Mulan, Jasmine. I'm sure there's about half a dozen others, but I can't name them off the top of my head. Anyway, continue.
That in itself could be considered problematic, but go on.
Indeed. So it's definitely something that's coming up a lot more lately, because a lot of our favorite media, like comic books, the very early comic books, where obviously all of the main characters were pretty much all white dudes, and a lot of oh God, we could talk a lot about different weird racist issues with manga, but you certainly never want to really. It's not a situation we don't want to talk about it, basically. We don't want it to be an issue anymore. We want to live in this grand era where if we make an adaptation of a comic book and the character is black, it's because the character is black, and we don't have to, talk about it like it's a big deal. That's the ideal world we should be living in, but we don't, which totally sucks. And that we don't live in that ideal world, because when the Hunger Games came out, people bitched that Rue was not white, when the character in the book is not white. So I don't like the idea of it, because we want some degree of consistency from one version of it to the other. So if it's based on a book, we want that, we want it to transfer the way that it was intended to from format to format. But it could send the right message depending on, the situation and the character. It could be good to see a minority in a role that they were not, was not written for that minority. It could be helpful. It could inspire people. And I mean, that's kind of a big deal, but it's all about doing it delicately, doing it being true to the author's intentions and a lot of other stuff. And so, in other words, through all this rambling, it's complicated.
See, my thoughts on the subject are, like, if you're going to take an established character and suddenly make them something just to tick a political correctness box, that's the wrong way to go about it. If you want to make a character who is of a certain race, religion, sexuality, insert whatever here, I think that kind of thing needs to be, first the character needs to be an established character in their own right. And I think that their minority status should not be the center of their character. I think that they need to be developed beyond that. And I think that whatever that minority status is, it should be at least planned from word go, and not something that's randomly introduced at some point several years down the line. This is something that I've actually had a discussion I've had with a friend of mine, because I don't know if I've ever mentioned this, but I dabble in fanfic writing, and one of my friends who I showed this to asked why I didn't make this one character, lesbian, and I was like, well, why does she need to be? Who she goes to bed with tonight has no bearing on the overall story. Why does she need to be? I mean, I didn't say anything in the story either way, whether she was straight or lesbian. It was just not a part of the story. So I feel like that if you're going to do something like that, it needs to be a part of the character, but it can't be the center of the character. That's just my thoughts on how making any character minority should be handled. It should be a part of the character from the get-go, but not the be-all end-all of the character. And it's kind of funny that this question comes in the wake of the announcement of the new Annie movie. And apparently the new Annie is black. They're taking sort of an inner city route with this. And it's got all these people up in an uproar because Annie was a white character. Why is she black? And I'm sitting here thinking, okay, it doesn't matter to me that Annie is black. I'm wondering why we need a new Annie in the first place. So, but that's just me. Brian, what about you? What do you think?
It is a massively complicated situation, because you mentioned Annie. I can mention the Fantastic Four movie with Michael B. Jordan, who I think I said his name right, maybe not. He's playing Johnny Storm, and he's African American, and people were but Johnny Storm's a white dude. I said, yeah, he's also, like we said, these comics have existed for 80 plus years, and the early comics came out. It was a bunch of white guys writing a bunch of white characters. And you kind of look around at the world now going, well, that's not the case anymore. So, you kind of want, if you want to sort of continue, you kind of have to update. I feel like at some certain situations, because the world's not this sort of like, you know, very pale looking society. It's all a bunch of people. So you kind of want that represented the best you can. And it's funny because in comics, a lot of legacy characters, if you kind of look through the history of legacy characters, like the second or third generation of these legacy characters are minority characters. The second Mr. Terrific is black. The third Blue Beetle is Hispanic. The new Miss Marvel is Islamic. And so,
which I think is awesome, by the way.
Yeah, so like it's weird because they're trying to say, all right, these are new characters, but they have familiar names. So it's sort of trying to play both decks, going, yeah, it's Blue Beetle, but it's a new guy, and he just happens to be, you know, this person, or she just happens to be this as well. When you get into the films, though, and especially with like the characters like Fantastic Four, who have been around forever, and they sort of say, we want to sort of modernize it, so one of the characters will now be black. I can see where they're going with it. If it works, it works. You know, that's kind of where it is, and I hope it works, because in end result, representation matters. I think that's the tagline. I'm going to kind of end it there.
Okay. Skyblaze, what about you? What are your thoughts?
I think Cat's right, is that it is a complicated issue, but the fact is that we do live in a multicultural society, regardless of what old white codgers will try and tell you. That is a fact. There are people who are black, there are people who are Asian, there are people who are white, there are people who are mixed race, there are people who are trans, there are people who are gay. Get the fuck over it if you have an issue with this, and accept the fact that that's what the world looks like. But this is not reflected in our media. You pick up any given comic or the covers of books or films or TV shows, and the vast majority of faces you will see will be white, and that's bullshit. And it's not going to change, and people are not going to. People are very. It's very easy for people, especially in the creative industry, to just carry on doing what they were doing. And just keep kind of coasting. It's dead easy. They have a formula. They know it works. Doing something different is risky, and they don't like that. So unless it's actually being forced from the outside for things to change, it's not going to. So you can call it tokenism if you want, but at the same time, what movies and creative media are supposed to reflect our society, especially when it comes to stuff like fantasy and science fiction. It's supposed to be kind of a reflection of what our culture is. It's supposed to say things about us. And what it says about us at the moment is the fact that we want to whitewash the entire world. And I don't like that. That makes me very uncomfortable. That makes me far more uncomfortable than having a black guy as Johnny Storm.
You know, going back to that, this is something I've never, because I never read the story, I never asked. But who do they have playing Sue Storm in this new Fantastic Four?
John, do you know? Because I don't remember her name.
I looked it up. It's going to make it into my headlines. I don't have them right in front of me right now, but no, I know where Gonzo's going with this, but Sue Storm is not black. But yes, as far as I'm aware, they are still going to be presented as siblings, which is possible. It is possible.
There's also things like adoption.
There's adoption.
They could be half siblings.
Yeah,
could be half siblings, or maybe one of them just happens to take more after one parent than the other.
Yeah, but consider the average mindset of the average American moviegoer. Are they really going to think that far ahead?
My heart fucking bleeds for them. They can get out.
You took the words right out of my brain. I was just literally about to say, fuck the average moviegoer. They're the reason the Transformers movies are so damn successful.
Preach, sister, preach. I don't know. I just don't like doing it.
That's like, you know what I was just saying about change not being accepted unless it's forced from the outside? Here you go!
Is it my turn yet?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go on.
Oh, what a lovely can of worms. Let me just open that real quick. Okay. Couple of things. First of all, regarding the issue of there not being people of color and minorities in older Europe, I have one little name to drop here. Alexander Dumas.
Yes.
You know, the creator of the Three Musketeers.
Yes.
His father was black. He was in a position of a fair amount of privilege and power, actually, as I recall. And yes, while people like that were minorities, they did exist. And there were free people of color in America, too, even before slavery was abolished. Marie Laveau actually springs to mind, because I'm from Louisiana. But the issue here, I see two sides to this issue. On the one side is the problem of representation, and on the other side is the problem of tokenism. Now, when it comes to representation, I don't get as up in arms about a character's race or sexual preferences or gender identity being changed as much as some fanboys do, because real people have rights, fictional characters don't. And fictional characters are not set in stone. They change and evolve all the time. You know, Dracula, going to one of my favorite examples, Dracula started out as a complete monster in the original novel and has evolved over the years into this kind of tragic, romantic figure. And whereas I can have and will continue to rant and rail against that because I prefer him as an evil monster, it's clear to me that the cultural narrative may be moving on without me in that particular case, and I may just have to accept that my Dracula is no longer pop culture's Dracula. And that's completely fine, because that's what makes a fictional character survive. That's what makes them live on past the deaths of their original creators, is their ability to change and adapt and continue to reflect the needs and interests of the culture around them. So, you know, if Johnny suddenly, you know, is suddenly black in a movie, which is already a separate continuity from the comics anyway, then I'm completely fine with that. Just like, you know, I don't think anybody is complaining about the fact that Samuel L. Jackson is playing Nick Fury in Marvel's cinematic universe, even though outside of the Marvel Ultimates universe, the Ultimate Marvel universe, excuse me, Nick Fury has always historically been a white character.
Well, not until recently.
Oh, have they changed that?
A little bit. But that's neither here nor there. Continue.
Okay. Nor do I recall anybody complaining in the 60s when, you know, Eartha Kitt played Catwoman a few times when she'd always been played by Julie Newmar up to that point. Because Eartha Kitt is fucking awesome. Or it was, you know. Alright.
I would also like to raise Idris Elba as Heimdall.
Oh god, yes.
Who turns up and wins.
So much yes.
Fucking yes. All my yes. But what's interesting is, as long as we're on the subject, what's interesting is sometimes stories that do actually have non-white characters in their adaptations get reinterpreted where the non-white characters get depicted as European white characters.
Oh god, here we go.
Yeah, that is a problem.
For instance, there's this famous trilogy that was shot in New Zealand a few years ago. Some of you may have seen one or two of these movies. And there's a certain character that I recently learned, a character named Aragorn, who, according to Tolkien's original notes about his people and race, would have been more accurately portrayed by someone of Arabic descent.
Yep.
And that's but one of many examples. People have actually unfairly accuse Tolkien of some racism because they're like, well, all the good guys are white male Europeans and all the bad guys are dark-skinned orcs and monsters, whereas that's not actually how Tolkien wrote the books. That's just how they've been interpreted in art and other media over the years.
You know, he's right. It's been so long since I've read the books, I completely slipped my mind. And yeah, Sauron, before he suffered his great injury and started wearing all the dark and spiky armor, he was a Nazi's wet dream. Blonde hair, blue eye, tall, strapping.
Yeah. Well, he was described specifically as like an angelic figure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Also, a lot of the orcs were described as being as living on not the orcs. The goblins were described as being living underground, so they had bleach white skin because they've never been exposed to sunlight.
But you don't hear complaints about that, which I think, or at least not from the same people who complain when the white characters.
It smacks of hypocrisy.
Yeah, it's very telling to me. But on the other hand. I'm not playing devil's advocate because, fuck those guys. But on the other hand, there is a legitimate point to be concerned about this issue when it comes to, as I said, tokenism. And what happens with that is when, as the question is phrased, you have a minority character specifically so you can check off the box. When the character's race or sexual orientation or gender identity or whatever issue the writer is trying to address becomes the one and only defining point of that character. And this is usually done by, I hate to say it, this is usually done by really well-meaning but clueless straight white dudes. The same thing has been happening to female characters for a long, long time now. Exactly. And how fucked up is that, incidentally? Women make up 50% of the world's population, but they're still kind of treated like a minority in media. Yeah, next time you see a crowd scene in a film, count how many females there are in the crowd. I guarantee you it's going to be less than a fifth.
Well,
it's when you basically the issue comes down to if you're going to include minority characters, make sure that they are characters first and foremost. It's kind of like Joss Whedon's success to Joss Whedon's secret to success to writing good female characters. Write them as people, not as female characters. Write them as characters. As soon as you make okay, well, I'm not going to say every single time, but most of the time, if you are making the character's minority status the central focal point of their character, unless that's the thrust of the whole narrative, and unless you actually have personal experience with the stuff they've gone through, you're probably going to wind up doing it wrong.
I don't think there's any better way to put it, and if there is, we're not gonna hear it because we've been on this for about 20 minutes now, so we kind of got to move on. Okay, this one is from Paul for Skyblaze, and he asks if you know the reason why there is an arbitrary span of time between a U.S. release date and a European release date.
What could if I know?
Yeah, seriously, I was in business school. I still don't even fucking know.
This is one of those things that always baffle me. In the case of, why do you make it so fucking hard for you to give me my money? For me to give you money. I have money. I want to see the thing that the product that you are producing, the film, game, whatever it is, and you keep it to one side for some reason. So I can't see it because I happen to live in the UK. So instead of me giving you money, I go onto a site where I get it for free, and then I don't give you money. I'm confused as to where exactly the logic in this practice lies.
Distribution rights?
Well, not always the case, because, in the case of studios that actually own their own distribution network, like Disney, for example, it makes no sense, and yet they still do it. Especially with things like the Muppet movie, that was a 4-month gap?
Well, you got it before we did.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, you did.
No.
You
Oh,
did
you
get
got
a movie
Avengers
before us.
We did.
Yeah.
Some movie.
Okay. Yeah. Because
But yeah,
about what.
It doesn't make any sense.
Especially for things like video games, where everything, there's not, EA would be the publisher of a game in America, and it would also be the publisher of the same game in the UK. So the distribution rights thing, I don't see that being another issue. But I tell you, on this topic, something I found recently that was kind of funny. There's this new meme going around. It's a screen cap of South Park of a Randy Stansfather being arrested. It's like, X act is happening here. I thought this was America. And there's one I saw the other day of, what? Europe's getting Captain America, the Winter Soldier for the U.S.? I'm sorry, I thought this was America.
It especially baffles me when, in 1992, they managed a simultaneous worldwide release of Sonic 2. It is now 2014, and we can't manage simultaneous worldwide releases. The fuck?
I think a lot of it, boils down to the fact that we have a bunch of old white guys in charge who don't know how to do anything.
Well, I think, at least on the video game score, there's also been some changes in the technology.
Yeah.
Since like a cartridge game was a cartridge game, but now, a game might have to be coded a certain way to work on European consoles. No, I don't know. It might
region coding, such bullshit. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Region coding is essentially DRM. It doesn't have to be there. It's something they put in. It's not built into the console. It's something they add there to make it more difficult.
Yeah.
There is no technical reason for it to be there. It is an artificial barrier.
Well,
sorry.
No,
we have strong feelings against this, alright? We need to let this out. We need to let it go. Fuck, Frozen!
God, just waiting for this.
Yeah, I have issues with this practice. Just safe to say, I have issues with this practice. It does not make me happy. Let us leave it at that before I explode in fiery rage. I'm saving that up for the discussion segment later.
Okay, alrighty. Well, that's all the Ask the Geek questions that we have for this week. As always, you can send them to us through the email at billysmith@channelawesome.com or drop them in the That Guy with Glasses forum thread of the same name. Personally, we'd prefer if you send it to us through the email. It's a little easier for us to keep track of that way. But yeah, and so with that, we're going to jump right into our headline, starting with Brian. So Brian, take it away. And then Brian, since you're the only correspondent here, just throw it straight to Kat.
Okay.
Yeah, and then, Brian to Kat. Skyblaze, are you still on break from headlines?
Yeah, till the end of March.
So Kat, throw it to me.
Okay.
And then, there we go. Okay. Alright, and so that pretty much wraps that up.
Thank you, and welcome to this week's tour of the Multiverse with Multiverse Headlines. This has actually been a much quieter week than before. A lot of my news actually comes from South by Southwest, but before that, it's time to update everyone on the sales of the industry going forward. Now, percent of recent retail and dollar shares for almost everyone has been pretty steady these last few months, with only minor changes, which is really why I haven't talked about them, because nothing big has been happening. The same goes for the books in the top 10. The big difference now, though, is that this past February was the second month in a row that sales have been down compared to previous years. So you had low sales in January, and now you have low sales in February. No real explanation has been given for the drop. There's just some theories floating around. A lot of them that the big sales growth has stopped, so we're going to see a little bit shrinking before again plateauing off. Mine is actually a little bit different. I think the weird winter that we sort of been having this past last year has been chaos for the comic book shops. Late deliveries, people can't being able to get out to the stores themselves. I think people have actually started moving towards digital because of this. If you're a comic book fan, you kind of want that fix, that immediate I want to buy this sort of now situation. And some may look to digital as that fix when they couldn't get out to the store or they knew that their product was going to be late. The more people buying digital, paper sales go down. Now, I wish I could say, yeah, this is actually what's happening. Unfortunately, digital sales are a mystery. No one regularly knows digital sales but the actual companies, and for some unknown reason, they're not letting them out. For whatever reason. So, hopefully, maybe this will be a trend. I'll keep an eye on it. We don't know. Perhaps in March, they'll rise again. But for right now, it's sort of a weird little area that the sales are starting to slump a little bit. So I'll be sure to keep you posted the best that I can. Now last year, about this same time at South by Southwest, Marvel introduced the concept of an audio app for their digital comics, once called Project Gamma, but now they're no longer using that as the title. This year, they're actually integrating it with the Marvel's AR, augmented reality technology. The idea is that not only would it add supplemental pop-up elements, but now you also have soundtracks when you load up a comic. Mostly in Marvel's Unlimited comic app, and only right now in Marvel's Unlimited comic app. It won't be available, I believe, in Comixology at all. As of right now, though, the only comic available with this feature is Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Oh, that's convenient. There was a movie with the same name coming out very soon. Now, for me personally, as I said last year, this project just seems unnecessary. It's just added bells and whistles to something, for the most part, you don't really need. This is making comics a step below motion comics. Now, there may be some who think this will add to their reading experience, and if it does, good on to you. But overall, I am not super impressed with this. Now, still with Marvel, almost lost in the headlines was the writing team behind the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon, who will also be writing an upcoming digital series based on said show, which is more or less you like to focus on a sort of solid new book, easy to access for everyone. Well, everyone who enjoys the show anyway. I know there are some detractors out there. That is not the only new book coming out from Marvel. Alan Davis and Jim Starlin are putting together another anthology series in the same vein as Avenging Spider-Man and Savage Wolverine. This time it's Savage Hulk, who will be the main star with guests coming up and around him. So check that out when it finally debuts. There's no real time frame yet. So, moving on to the independents, it seems that another Cartoon Network show will be getting the jump into the pages of comics. The lucky show this time is Steven Universe from Boom Studios in a first look deal with Cartoon Network. What this means is Boom is going to be getting the first chance to adapt Cartoon Network shows into comic book forms. And they're starting with Steven Universe, then following up later this year with The Amazing World of Gumball. This is interesting. This is the first kind of deal Cartoon Network has really worked with the publishing side of things. The ability that one show or one publisher gets to look at what they're making, say, yes, we would like to adapt that, we get first chance. They have sort of literally called dibs on anything that new is produced by Cartoon Network. Now, some may ask, what about IDW? Well, IDW's deal doesn't seem to be affected by that because it's all a lot of the other older Cartoon Network shows, the classic Cartoon Network shows. Think of it like this. Boom is now Cartoon Network proper, and IDW is now Boomerang. Not really a bad setup when you think about it. Now, I'm going to steal a headline from Brendan, if it's alright with him, but this still has to deal with comics, do not worry. Valiant Entertainment announced that they are teaming up with Catalyst Games to produce a Valiant Universe RPG. Catalyst Games Labs, the people who brought you the popular Shadowrun series. Now, not too much is known on the project just yet, but the playstyle they said is going to be a more non-traditional RPG, where the storytelling and game mastering, or DMing, is going to be shared among the players. It's interesting. I'm only still a newbie with RPGs. I've only really played Dungeons & Dragons. I've never played Shadowrun, though I've heard many great things. This could be the opportunity for myself to get involved, and I am a fan of Valiant. I can finally be Ninjak, since they won't let me write the book. Now for my final story, and it's a short story, don't worry. DC is bringing back a Jack Kirby-inspired team for the New 52. the Forever People and the Infinity Man. This is a fourth world concept that Jack Kirby wrote for about 12 issues way back in the day. The book is also bringing back the team of Dan Didio and Keith Giffen, and it's their first book together since OMAC, which was started at the New 52, which I know a lot of people won't say it now, but I will, and maybe a bit of an unpopular opinion. It was actually a fairly fun, good book, and it was the most Jack Kirby-ish thing I've seen in a very long time. This could work out again. Lightning might strike twice, but at the same time you have to remember OMAC didn't last very long, because not a lot of people read it, despite the fact I thought it was actually fairly good. Well, that's all the time I have on this tour of the multiverse. I'd like to thank you for listening, but for now, back to you, Dr. Gonzo.
Alright, thank you, Brian. And with that, we're going to jump into anime news with the Cat. Cat, take it away.
Thanks, Dr. Gonzo. Australian anime distributor Madman Entertainment is for sale. Madman founders Tim Anderson and Paul Weigard have made an offer to buy back the company from current owner Funtastic Limited. Funtastic acquired Madman in 2006 as a way to obtain DVD rights for properties they already held toy rights for and to expand their presence in the DVD market overall. However, it appears Madman's market value has dropped and perhaps the company is no longer worth the money Funtastic spent acquiring it. That works out just fine for Madman, whose founders have stated that the aims of owner and company have diverged too far and that Anderson and Weigard are itching to get back and control the development of Madman. So far so good. Funtastic has agreed to the preliminary terms of the sale and they are currently negotiating the details with a final agreement expected to be signed in the next few weeks. Best of luck to Madman. They are the top anime distributor in Australia, and the fate of the country's industry could rest on their success. Studio Ghibli co-founder Suzuki Toshio is stepping down from his position as producer. He originally served as Ghibli president until 2008 and has produced every Ghibli feature film until last year. Putting all of his effort into the Wind Rises production meant that Nishimura Yoshiaki made his debut as the new Ghibli producer during The Tale of Princess Kaguya, which was released last November in Japan. Suzuki isn't getting out of the game, though. He will assume the new title of Grand Manager and will continue to act in different positions for future films. Suzuki is insistent that his retirement from producing isn't linked to Miyazaki's quote-unquote retirement from feature filmmaking. Suzuki wants to boost a new era for Ghibli with young blood like Nishimura. Suzuki made news recently at a symposium with other Best Animated Feature Academy Award nominees when he stated that he had convinced Miyazaki to make The Wind Rises rather than a Ponyo sequel. Next, a bit of news about our favorite network dedicated to cartoons, Cartoon Network. I think we all remember Cartoon Network's not really cartoon phase, when they went the way of MTV, who doesn't play music anymore, and filled viewing blocks with not cartoons. When you stopped watching Cartoon Network. The man behind the monstrosity of horrible ideas is Stu Snyder, who became the executive VP and COO of Turner Animation in 2007. It was in 2009 that Snyder, having conducted some research on what kids wanted to watch and at what times, decided to introduce a slew of live action and reality shows, including sports programming. Sports on Cartoon Network! Well, with the popularity of Adventure Time and Regular Show, it proved that people who watched Cartoon Network wanted to watch cartoons, and so they were forced to reconsider their horrible, misguided ways. Well, say goodbye to Stu Snyder and his controversial decisions. He has left the building. A new management regime took over at Turner, shifting head of sales and distribution David Levy to the position of president. Rumors of tensions between Snyder and Levy are being cited for Snyder's less than amicable departure. And finally, a quick bit of news for all you Durarara fans out there. Dur is finally getting a well-deserved second season. 4 years after the release of the anime and 10 years since the novels debuted, the cast and crew of Dur are back for a new anime series. Not a lot is known about it right now, unless you read the novels, but it will reportedly take place half a year after the first series. No word yet on a broadcast date, but you'd better believe I'll let you know as soon as I find out. Now, if we could just get another season of Baccano to go with it. And that's all I've got going on in the anime and manga world. Kicking it back to you, Dr. Gonzo.
Alright, thank you, Kat. And that's really all the headlines that are worth hearing this week. And so with that, we're going to take a quick music break. When we come back, Linkara joins us to talk about Eric Stevenson's keynote speech to comics retailers. Going to be a bit of an interesting debate there. Stay tuned, we got a lot of fun stuff ahead. This is our musical break, or at least it would be if YouTube didn't suck. Fuck you and your copyright rules, YouTube, you totally suck. Now back to our show. All right, and we are back. And one of the news stories that's been making waves over the last couple of weeks, especially in the comic book community, is a certain speech made by one Eric Stephenson of Image Comics that's ruffled a few feathers. So we decided to take a look at it and kind of examine it blow by blow and see, are there some good points in here, or are there some bad points? And we thought it'd be a fun idea to bring in another expert in here on this discussion. So we've got Channel Awesome's own comic book guru, Linkara, here to discuss this with us today. Linkara, how's it going?
Going just fine. Yeah, and I haven't read it. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I've read it. I have my thoughts about this.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. It's always a pleasure having you on the show. So, Brian, why don't you give those of us who might not be familiar with Mr. Stevenson or his words a bit of background on this speech? When was it given, and what was the basic theme of it?
Well, it was given several weeks ago at what's called Comics Pro, their annual meetup. And Comics Pro is a trade organization that is, in their words, dedicated to the progress of the direct market of comic book retailers. So he made this in, I believe, Atlanta, Georgia, during their meetup. And so the audience that he was speaking to is the direct market. It is retail shop owners and worker employees or anything like that. So it's going directly to the people who hold the comic books, in a sense. He's done this speech, I think, a couple of times, but this is sort of the first time that he's sort of said or done anything that kind of made a few people go, yes, and then also go, hey, time out, wait a second. That seems a little bit wrong. So this is sort of like what's going on, sort of the background to it. It's always a good idea to kind of get that knowledge that he's not necessarily speaking to comic fans, but the actual retailers themselves. And that puts some perspective on some of these things. That makes sense.
Okay. All right, Lewis, anything to add to that?
Only that some of the things, yes, he's speaking to the retailers themselves, who are actually responsible for comic sales. That's the thing that should be clarified a lot of the time when it comes to comic sales. A lot of the time, they don't actually know exact numbers about who is reading what. What they know, when we have sales numbers printed on like comicron.org, those are stuff that's from the retailers, and the retailers are the ones who have to order things several months in advance, and as such, it creates some rather iffy points with some of the things he said specifically to retailers, and that's what's especially gotten some people rather head tilting in my opinion from what I've seen.
Okay, so overall, what's the general theme of this speech? What's the general opus behind it?
Things need to be better.
Things need to be better. Hey, we're selling some stuff. Buy our stuff. Image Comics, buy our stuff. Like, there's a lot of that.
Yeah, I especially love at the very beginning of the speech is, I hope you don't mind if I deviate from standard practice, but instead of talking about Image Comics this morning, I'd like to talk about you. And yet, later on, he goes on specifically, hey, we're Image. We're doing awesome stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. So now, Brian, you mentioned that there were some good points and some bad points made in this speech. What are some of these points that he's attacking or championing over the course of this speech?
Well, after you get him sort of buttering up the crowd a little bit, talking about how great it is to be a comic book shop and how very appreciative he is to them because they care. He sort of mentions that. They've all the direct market has sort of stuck around despite the fact everyone thought it was supposed to die off because of bookstores. But then not Barnes & Noble, Borders went out of business, but comic shops are still here. Then digital was supposed to wipe comic shops off the planet, but comic shops are still here. So he's trying to say, I want to make you guys stronger. And so to kind of do that, one of the things I like he did bring up is that we should stop looking at the comic book market as the big two, or in case for him, the big three, because he wants to put his Image Comics up into there. It should be, we should only focus on good comics and bad comics. And that's it. If it's a good comic, we should try to push the good comic. If it's a bad comic, we should try not, push the bad comics. And that kind of makes sense. I can kind of see where he's going with that. The idea of if it's good, it should be spotlighted. If it's bad, maybe not so much. And it sort of it's sort of like you guys should have more of a choice to that, and we shouldn't be as publishers kind of going into your face and saying, yeah, this is really what's going to happen, and kind of the lying deceit, if you will, and sort of prop themselves up, not because of fans, but maybe because of shareholders, because they're now working for big corporations, and that's who their market is now, not necessarily the direct market of the fans, but the shareholders.
Okay. Anything to add to that?
Well, I mean, it's hard because I like the idea of just, like I said, I like the idea of him saying everything should be focused on just good or bad, not this company's good, this company's bad, this company's bad, this company's good, this company's bad. But it's at the same time that seems very idealistic, because it's really hard to sort of just say, yeah, this company, yeah, this is good and bad, black and white, while at the same time he wants to push himself as only good stuff. And I don't know, he talks about lying, and he comes up with the idea of shipping. How it always starts with the publishers are now double shipping twice a month, or they're going to be shipping weekly very soon, and that's where it starts. And I hear that, I was like, wait, you double ship Walking Dead? Like every month now for a while. You've been double shipping Walking Dead. It's like, are you doing something bad, or is that something good? Because now I don't know anymore.
Well, now what do you mean double shipping? Like they're shipping double the amount of books that were ordered, or
no? It's bi-weekly basically at this point.
Okay.
Right. Marvel's been doing a lot of bi-weekly books, and DC's has
announced that they're going to be doing some
3 weekly comics. Yeah. They got the 3 weeklies eventually showing up. It's like, that's insane almost. So, and that also extends to pricing, which I probably have lost sleep over. Because as your correspondent to comics, I like to look at the sales charts and report on them. And my God, it's just, at times I go cross-eyed. Just trying to figure out where exactly everything is. Because when you look at pricing of comics, prices have gone up. But we sort of hit this weird barrier. Not even a weird barrier. We've hit a barrier that we don't really want them to go any higher than what they are. But every so often, a really high-priced comic will sort of sneak through and then sell really well. So you're getting sort of mixed signal from everyone. And I think they want that to kind of stop. We should have a solid price.
Okay.
What happened was in the 90s, comics were actually proceeding along very steadily in terms of inflation and whatnot in the prices. Then around the speculator boom in the early to mid 90s, prices suddenly started jumping up, and hence why we have comics that are now at $3 or $4 as the average price when they shouldn't be if we were to follow the actual inflation rates.
And not only that, like I said, every so often you'll get a book that's $7.99 or $8.
Yeah.
But and a lot of times they'll say, like, well, that's a very special issue. It's oversized, so it's kind of an overprice. Dark Horse was the only company that actually had a $7.99 ongoing book, but they had to cancel it, and then it's going to be relaunched at like a $3.99 price point and made smaller. So the market cannot handle an ongoing $7.99 book. But at the same time, it's like, even with a $7.99 book coming in, even if it's special, that's an expensive. That's almost $10. Like, that's like 2 gallons of milk.
Now my question with the pricing is that as the prices go up, has the amount of content gone up as well? Because I remember when during my brief stint working at a comic book store here in Glen Burnie, most every book that I read, like every other page was an ad. You'd have a page of story, page ad, page of story, page ad. Is that still the case, or has the story to ads ratio remained kind of level, or has one risen along with the price?
It depends on the book. I mean, DC for a while said that yes, we have to raise the prices for our books, but tell you what, we'll compensate. We'll make an agreement. We'll make some books shorter and keep them at the regular price, or some books will be at the $4 price point, but we'll add an extra 12 pages of content with like a backup story, so you'll get your money's worth either way. But then I don't think they seem to have done that for a while now. I think ever since the New 52.
No, there's not been any backups. And Marvel's has done if the book's $2.99, it's $2.99. If it's $3.99, we'll give you a free digital code for said book. I think I'm not sure if they're the only ones that do that. They might be the only ones that do that. So everything has close to the same page count, but they're trying, a little bit different ways to sort of compensate, I guess.
Now, along with talking about the price points, he also, Mr. Stevenson also mentions variants. Basically boiling it down to, you stop ordering variants, we'll stop making them. What are your guys' thoughts on that aspect of the issue?
I find that the most interesting part of this, especially because he's addressing retailers. He's basically saying, yeah, it's your fault.
Yeah, and it's so, like, yeah, I'm glad he understands economics. I do. But it's weird because the retailers, but they also retailers buy it because they know some people will also buy the variants. And
because they're making it available.
Yeah, they're making it available. And no offense, Eric, Walking Dead 100 had 12 variant covers. 12. I mean, that's
many?
12 variant. That's still the lowest. That's still like one of the lowest, but still 12. Now, again, it's a special. It was a 100, but still, if you're saying you don't want to make variant covers anymore, don't make variant covers.
And we're not going to have another speculator boom. I mean, there's no reason to have variant covers. It's hard enough to justify having just 2 or 3 of them. Having 12 of them, even for a special issue, what is the point?
And then there's some books that have obscene numbers of variant covers without it even being a special issue. I'm looking right at you, My Little Pony, who has 12 covers for every single issue.
Well, that's IDW. IDW loves the cover A, cover B way of doing things.
Do you actually know why that is?
Go right ahead. I do not.
I chatted to some of the IDW writers at a auto assembly a few years back, and the writers and artists said that IDW is actually really chilled about like who gets their artwork in, especially for covers, because it doesn't necessarily have to match the inner artwork. So quite often they will post up a concept somewhere on the kind of internal mail and say, here is what we're doing for the next couple of weeks. If you want some of your artwork on the cover and it inspires you, go ahead, we don't care, whatever. So they will get like half a dozen covers in from various different artists in the company who are like, oh, that sounds cool, I'll draw that. Because these people are insane, all of them. I've met about 4 or 5 who work for IDW, and they're all mental.
I've only ever talked to their editor-in-chief, and he's a really cool guy. And I was I was actually pitching a story to him for Transformers. He said, "This is really cool, but we have our plan set for like the next 6 some odd years." I'm like, "You have what?"
Yeah.
My question about that then is, are they just shipped? Are all those variant covers then shipped out without the retailers aware of it, or are the retailers aware of all the various different variants and then ordering them?
Oh, some of the retailers even get their own exclusive variants. I remember the one that sticks out in my mind is Third Eye Comics, which is a comic shop in Annapolis, just a few miles out from me. They got their own exclusive cover for, I think, like the first 3 issues of My Little Pony. Just them. Which I felt was kind of a kick in the teeth to people living in the other 49 states of the Union who don't have Third Eye Comics, but, you know.
I would just like to point out that it kind of sucks to be anywhere outside the US as well.
I can imagine. I've heard of the shops like getting their own variants, and they have to pay. I think they have to pay for that, or they have to order like an insane amount of books.
Yeah, DC has put out certain books that you can. There are certain books you can order where they like print your comic shop in the actual like cover. I don't get the point of it for the most part, but whatever makes them happy.
Yeah, I think it's like I think that's actually more for the retailers than I think for a customer. It's for the retailers to go, look how cool we are, and then they'll probably put it up on the wall and never sell it.
So do you think the issue with variant covers is that the amount of money they make selling the variant cover for however X amount of dollars? Like, I remember when I was working at a comic book store when Civil War was going, and we were selling the variant covers. We'd get like 1 or 2 of them in, and they were going for like $50 a pop. Is the issue now that kind of pricing scheme isn't making up for the amount of unsold books that they have to order to get those variants, or is it just not enough variants are going out to begin with?
I would say more to the former than the latter. It's them trying to kind of they have to order like 200 some odd books to get one variant. So, and they know they may not be able to sell all 200 of those books, So they sort of up the price of the variant to make up for the fact that they have unsold stock that's sort of just sitting on the shelves. And that's that's where, like, I think that's where it is really sucky, to use kind of a low term, is that why it is seemingly punishing the retailers. Yeah, I have 250 of this book. I can sell, on a good day, maybe I can sell 60. I still have over 100 of these things just sort of sitting on the shelves, and I might get the one guy or the one girl to come in and go, ooh, that's a cool variant, and make up the difference, but then I might not. So you're almost out of money either way.
I think it's a chicken and the egg kind of a situation. Like we said, the retailers buy them because they know that some of them will sell and they'll be able to, sell them at a higher price. But of course, it's the companies that put them out available to purchase in the first place. So of course, there's going to be like this kind of yin yang. Who is actually responsible for causing this? I just don't think you should put the blame on one side or the other. What I would prefer, if for a system, is offer different covers just in general, and say, hey, my customers are probably going to prefer this cover over this one, and they'll be more likely to pick this up just for browsing the rack and wanting to pick up something new.
Kind of a buffet style.
Yeah, that's what I'd prefer, but. I know that, but then again, they are printing the things, probably in advance, so they probably don't have that option available.
Okay.
One thing I want to mention as well, speaking about like the speculator boom and so on, when it comes to its kind of collectible value, a lot of... So I'm not a huge comics collector. I read comics, but I'm not a massive comics collector. But the friends of mine who are much more interested in kind of having for collection and specifically display. I forgot what they're called. The paste boards where they actually do the inking.
The original line art.
Yeah. They're much more interested in collecting those or prints of those than variant covers, because you can put those boards in a very nice frame and put them on the wall and have them all signed by the artist. It looks amazing. This is kind of a kind of more grown-up thing, I guess. Grown-up is the wrong word, but you get the idea. It's a bit more sophisticated.
I'd say it's more for the hardcore collector and fan. I know The Last Angry Geek. He has a lot of original artwork and inked artwork. He has a huge collection of it. He's shown me at some point.
Ooh,
that's
nice.
expensive, though. Man, when I was at San Diego and I was talking to the artists there, and they had their original stuff. A lot of those are really priced high. I'm talking several $100s high.
Depends on the artist. Some of them are willing to sell their original ink work for some random page of Green Lantern or something for like $15-$20.
Yeah.
If it's a famous page, a friend of mine has got one of the fairly famous pages from one of the Transformers comics back in the 80s of Galvatron going to crush Optimus Prime with a giant rock. And it's a dream sequence, but it's a very famous page because it was a cliffhanger page, and nobody knew that it was a dream sequence at the time. So he's got the original line art of that, which wasn't that expensive because he won it in an auction.
A lot of the time, the prices are dependent upon a few factors. One of them being, well, I'm not going to get much use out of this, maybe as a cutting board. So I might as well just get my money's worth off of it and sell it for whatever someone's willing to pay for it.
Yeah, a lot of artists have pointed out as well, it's like, these things sit in our garage. We don't do anything with them, they just take up lots of space. Do you have any idea how many of these we produce in a lifetime?
Alright, and now the next point that Stevenson seems to bring up is the idea of relaunching, renumbering, and rebooting books. And relying on nostalgia for old movies, toys, and cartoons.
Boy.
And,
he makes, I don't want to cut you off, but I do want to sort of jump in, because he makes this I think, honestly, a wonderful correlation between the comic industry and the music industry.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason I'm sort of saying that, because my day job, I have to deal with music all day long. But he makes a really good point, is that the music industry sort of has not sort of gotten with the times, so they struggle with physical CDs and things like that. So They have all sorts of box sets and reissues, double packs, multi-packs. The Beatles came out, and all their packs are mini vinyl record holders, even though they're CDs. And I mean that's kind of cool and all, and yeah, it's going to make money, but it doesn't really set for the future. You help the bottom line for maybe a quarter, maybe a year if you're lucky, but then you're right back at square one. And so what happens? Well, it worked once. Let's do it again. And I thought, I was like, all right, this is where I feel like this is the most truth is coming out of it. And he's kind of saying, this is what we're doing now. We need to be better than doing that, because with all the reboots and relaunches and renumberings, it's not bringing in new fans. It's probably alienating the current fans more than it's bringing in new fans.
I would generally agree. I mean, he does make some excellent points in here, especially when it comes to the kind of parallels between the comic industry and the music industry, especially when you look at the number of the kind of percentage of people who are actually gaining benefit from this kind of constant nostalgia recycling. It's a tiny percentage of people who are gaining benefit from that compared to the number of people who could actually be breaking into the industry, who can't get a look in because it's entirely dominated by this paradigm, this set of expectations that we cater for these people and that's it.
It's taken them forever for the industry to start embracing digital distribution. But frankly, I don't think they go far enough. And I'm not surprised that he doesn't bring this up in this article, because it's talking directly to retailers and the retailer concern of digital replacing comic stores altogether. Does not surprise me to do that. But it still fascinates me that they're not bringing up very easy methods of getting new fans and getting an inbuilt population of people to become comic fans who are technically already comic fans, but they just don't realize it, and that is webcomics. What they need to do, in my opinion anyway, they need to start offering more free digital content and give people a reason to come back day after day to their web pages and start expanding out into the physical stuff. Why don't we have any of the big three, big four doing some sort of ongoing webcomic kind of a thing?
I want to expand on that if I can.
Go ahead.
Are you familiar with a publisher called Baen?
I am not.
Novel publisher. Baen Books has an online free library where very prolific authors, such as John Ringo, I think Mercedes Lackey's on there, my personal crack dealer / David Weber, who is the Honor Harrington series, which is very successful. And what they do on the Baen Free Library is that they have the first couple of books in what's usually a very long series. So they've got the first two Honor Harrington books, which were, I think, first published sometime in the early 80s. So, original printings are actually pretty hard to get hold of now. Mm-hmm. And they have those for free. The first taste is free. Why can't they, pick, I don't know, one of the kind of big long series and have like the first 10 issues for free?
It's interesting.
Everything after that you have to pay for, but by that point you're hooked.
Yeah, because the only person that I know has actually tried what Linkara has said has been Mark Waid with, I think, his Thrill Bent comics, where it's basically just web comics, free issues. I cannot think of a reason why someone else has not done it, or another company hasn't done it. I am afraid I'm stumped, because there doesn't seem like to be a negative reaction to it. I do know Marvel's going to try to put out free digital stuff, but it's always going to be connected to whatever cartoon show they have on now, because I think Ultimate Spider-Man is going to get a free digital comic pretty soon.
Mm-hmm. Which is a bit weird, because it has absolutely nothing to do with the television series.
It doesn't?
Well, not really.
I must have read that headline wrong. Uh-oh.
Well, as in the comic content bears no relation to the content of the cartoon series.
Oh.
I said that wrong, I'm sorry.
Okay.
That's what I meant.
Okay.
All right, that makes a little more sense.
All right. So now, what about this? What about this point that he makes about the constant renumbering, reboots, and retools, and the repeated use of what he's calling nostalgic properties? What are you guys' thoughts on that?
Well, it depends on what you mean by nostalgic properties. Are we moving into the bit where he talks about licensed stuff, or are we talking just about the superhero-related material?
I'm looking at the where is it here? I don't know. I'm kind of looking at the paragraph where it says constantly relaunching, renumbering, and rebooting series after series, staging contrived events designed to appeal to a demographic destined only to a slow march toward attrition, and pretending that endless waves of nostalgia for old movies, old toys, old cartoons, and old video games somehow equals ideas or innovation will not make us stronger.
You're sort of back at that's where he's like in between, because he does talk about how superheroes brought superheroes sort of brought everyone to the dance kind of situation. Mm-hmm. And it's like the constant rebooting, the constant renumbering. It is attrition, because the only people really keeping up with it are people who have been following it probably for a long period of time.
Idiots like me.
Yeah. Hey,
you said it, not us.
I'll raise my hand to that.
Let the record show you said it, not me.
So, indeed. It is attrition. Like, I'm sick of the fact that Secret Avengers is on its third reboot, or third, I guess, relaunch in almost a number of years. Like, it seems like every 12 issues, like, all right, this is done, new number one. Why? Just keep going forward. It doesn't seem like it would be a bad thing to just keep going forward.
Are they just phobic of the number 13?
People say they're phobic of number 50.
It's been like this for a while now. This problem of just lower sales, because as we talked about earlier, comic shops are the ones who actually dictate the sales numbers for comics, and over time each comic shop realizes, hey, not as many people are buying this, we have lots of back issues, so we order less and less each time. So it seems like every month books are just generally losing readers, when what's happening is that they're stabilizing to where they actually have an average reader base. But that is kind of scary for a lot of books to see constantly losing readers. So they're like, okay, we'll relaunch with number one, and then they will order more because it's a new number one, and thus a jumping on point for people.
It's also that I would like to speculate. I'd say it's also that they are mishandling a lot of these quote-unquote reboots, in that it's all very well to kind of say, oh yeah, we want to do this to invite new readers and so on, and that's lovely, but that's meaningless unless you actually manage to keep them by having well-told stories. Mm-hmm. And they are consistently mishandling this. They are rebooting and quote-unquote reimagining them, and then making exactly the same mistakes over and over and over again. They don't seem to learn anything from the fact that, okay, that wasn't selling well, let's try something else. They just kind of put a new number one on it, expect that to fix everything.
Yeah, I kind of really see what Skyblade is saying about they just keep making the same mistakes, and I think one of those big mistakes is they keep telling the same stories over and over. And I'm going to point to Transformers comics on this one. And not just comics, any Transformers property whatsoever. It's watching a stopwatch until Optimus Prime dies and is inevitably resurrected. It's like, okay, yes, he's died again. Okay, he lasted 13 episodes this time around. New personal best. Okay, let's bring him back up and see how long he lasts this time.
Optimus Prime died like 4 times in the 80s comic series.
Yeah,
everyone died in the 80s comic series,
including at one point because he lost a video game. And I'm a Transformers fan, and that made me want to beat myself unconscious against the nearest wall.
And the part that was really fucked up was I think that was the first time he'd ever died in a property. But it's like, okay, yes, Transformers the movie, yeah, his death was shattering, children cried, yes. Move the fuck on now! Do we need to see it over and over again? I mean, it's become a running joke at this point, and I think I don't know. Maybe I'm kind of misreading this, but it sounds to me like that's kind of the angle Skyblaze is going on here, where they just make the same mistakes over and over again.
Not entirely. I was actually, certainly they keep kind of trying to tell the same story, and a lot of the kind of retconning and re-retconning things, where it's like, that happened 20 years ago. Get the fuck over it. Yes, it happened. It was stupid. Tell a new fucking story instead of trying to explain an old one. But it's also things like, the way that female characters are treated, the way that minority characters are treated, Raper's backstory thing, which is still going on, and the kind of stupid things that keep happening, which says that you're not learning anything. You're still kind of it still feels like an industry in its early adolescence, and I feel it can do a lot better than that.
Indeed, I don't mind I don't mind telling the same story over and over again, as long as they continue to tell it in a new way or an interesting part of it. But it's the little tropes that they don't fix, like Skyblaze just said. Treatment of women in comic books, treatment of minorities, lack of representation in general in comic books, especially in superhero stuff. When there's clearly all this buzz, and there's a larger growing audience, and a potential audience that should already be trying to appeal to is just out there, and they're not taking active steps to try to embrace it. They're still trying to capture a demographic which has made it pretty clear that they're not interested, or they're going to be attracting the wrong kind of people with it, the kind of people they don't want to have as fans.
Which I suppose leads us into the next point that Stevenson makes in his speech when he says, right now the fastest growing demographic for, and I'm willing to speculate, the entire industry is women.
Aye.
So,
shock of all shocks, women read comics. They've been reading comics since the 40s.
My mother was reading comics in the 60s. For Christ's sake, she read the X-Men. Well, has it taken them this long to catch up? Sorry.
I wouldn't even say they've caught up, to be quite honest. They're still the, because even though he's bringing this up, I feel like he's only really bringing this up because he got basically called out at their Image Expo, where they announced like 7 or 8 new books and only one female writer. And people are like, hey, this keeps happening. Why does this keep happening? You guys are supposed to be better than this. And unfortunately, even though he mentions that the next couple of paragraphs is a giant billboard going, hey, buy our stuff. We have Kelly Sue. She's coming on with a series called Bitch Planet, which with that name alone, I might check it out.
Based on the name, I'm not entirely certain on that one. That one's kind of, really? You're trying a bit hard.
But they do also bring up Rachel Rising, Love and Rockets.
Yeah, Love and Rockets is awesome.
Rat Queens is actually a pretty good series.
I've not seen that one.
Think of it as a very ultraviolet D&D game.
That's another thing that ties back into my earlier point about the idea of trying to bring in webcomics, and that's a sub point with this. We need new creators in the industry.
Yeah.
When was the last time we had a huge influx of new talent anywhere in the Big 2, the Big 3, Big 4, however you want to call it? The last time I can think of is maybe early 2000s, when they were trying to bring in like novel writers and movie and screenwriters, which was just like, well, a lot of these people haven't frickin' read the books and are operating very much on old stereotypes of how the characters were acting. Why aren't you bringing on people who are already fans or have already proven themselves in creative environments related to comics, or start having open submission policies again?
I think I can kind of provide a roundabout answer to this one. I was coming out of high school during the big webcomics boom of the early 2000s, and one of the comics I followed and still follow today is PvP by Scott Kurtz. And in the early years, he wrote several times about the attitude of print comics, not just newspapers, but also the comic book publishers, had towards web comics. That they were these young upstarts who, weren't, hadn't paid their dues and were just expecting success right out the gate, and that the webcomic industry wasn't going to last, that this boom was just gonna kind of fizzle out and die. So I think maybe that kind of almost xenophobia is kind of still real big in effect.
And now here we are in an age where we have Penny Arcade, we have Girl Genius, we have Schlock Mercenary, Short Pact. You have an environment with much larger female audiences and a lot more female creators out there.
Yes, but I want to sort of also bring up is that how many times, I've seen this a lot over the years, how many times have people not bought a book because it wasn't a named person on said book? Like, they're scared because they're afraid that they won't sell because it's not a named person. So it's not
a Mike Wieringo or a Jack Kirby.
Which is why you start them off slow. I mean, a lot of these these people started off somewhere. You give them the low end titles and say, "Go nuts."
Well, this is what happens.
I also realized something kind of funny that both the names I just dropped are dead.
It's actually what Marvel UK was for a long time. From the 80s, certainly until the late 90s. I was very sad to hear that Marvel UK had actually been shuttered relatively recently. Because a lot of people pointed out this is where a lot of very famous comic book writers and artists got their start.
The British Invasion.
Oh yeah, and that's where they came from, and they shuttered it and said, no, we're not interested in having new talent. We're good, thanks.
So do you think there might be a solution in opening up, say, like another wing of Marvel, like kind of a comic book equivalent of Fox Searchlight, where they publish some more lesser known or independent
have a comic
creators?
book version of Steam Greenlight. Go for it.
Most definitely. The problem with Epic Comics wasn't the concept. Being they after Marvel, they tried to do Epic Comics again. The problem wasn't that the talent wasn't out there. It's that they published really crappy books. And what's funny is the really crappy books were the ones made by the established creators.
But there is sort of I can understand. I've said before that there should be a new sort of energy and definitely a younger group coming in to help create. I know Comixology does Comixology Submit, where if you make a comic, you can just give it to them and they'll put it up on their website. So like that's sort of one way. I wouldn't mind also like doing more digital first stuff with maybe lesser known people, because you're not taking as like the company may not be taking as big of a risk. It's like, okay, it's a digital first. We don't have paper for it just yet, but we can still promote it, still cut your teeth with it, and things like that. And eventually it'll probably come out in singles and then trades.
The other nice thing about having things digitally is that the stats are right there.
Yep.
You go onto the site and you look at how many unique hits you're getting in a week, and that tells you how many people are reading this.
And now, if they would only release the fucking numbers, I'm sorry.
Well, that's something that confuses me too, because I took a couple business classes for reasons I'm keeping close to the chest. But one of the things that was hammered into my head during these classes is that for people in marketing, actual quantifiable results, actual numbers of who's buying your product are like that's a marketing person's wet dream right there, and digital distribution provides that, no fuss.
Yeah, it's a godsend, is what it should be called.
And nobody's using it.
Now, part of it is that I think they're afraid of actually seeing the kind of actual demographic numbers. Back when the New 52 launched, there was a big attempt at creating a demographic read for who was reading DC Comics and how many of them were new readers, and they actually had online surveys and people in shops. The problem being that DC wanted a specific subset. They wanted the numbers to reflect the reality that they had versus what actually was happening. So if you gave the wrong answers that they didn't want on the online poll, they said, "We're sorry, we're not interested in you right now, so please go away."
Which is a great message to give your readers.
And apparently a lot of the the people, a lot of people in the actual shops who were doing the polling were very rude to women and other fans.
Oh,
So
good.
yeah.
Okay. Well,
I'm not surprised. I am disappointed.
Well, the next point's a big one, and I'm gonna go ahead and put my helmet on here because Skyblaze has already established that she's got a fuse lit ready for this one.
Rage.
And that's the idea that comics based off licensed properties aren't real comics.
He can die in a bin that is also on fire. Sorry.
This is where I think a lot of people sort of, tilted their head and said, "You've lost me. I don't. What is this?"
Wasn't there like a Gears of War or Mass Effect comic or something like that was sold with games that ended up
still
becoming
Mass
the
Effect
number
comics.
one sold comic of the last several years because
Yeah, there's and they still make Mass Effect comics too, and they're relatively all right.
just like
They
some of those
kind of go back and
game
forth.
that was considered the most read and most bought, and one that was actually generating buzz.
Well, I guess this sort of brings us to the question: is there something inherently wrong with licensed comics that they put out the wrong image of the industry, or?
A story is a story is a story. If it's a good story, people will read it. If it's shit, they won't.
Just look at Archie's Sonic comics.
Yeah.
This is more along the lines of what he was. I think what he wanted to do. He wanted to push up Image again, because right before this he was talking about Walking Dead and Jesus Christ, Walking Dead is everywhere. But he wanted to sort of push up Image and saying, well, you see, this stuff will never be quote unquote the real thing. I'm not sure what the real thing really means. Does he mean the movies or the games? I don't really understand what that point was, because there's nothing wrong with licensed comics.
I think when he's... Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just there's. Hold on. Thoughts coming back. Okay, yeah, there's nothing wrong with licensed comics, and this. You know what this honestly sounds like? This sounds like elitism on his part. It's like, you guys aren't real. These aren't real comics. You're not doing what we're doing. We're doing original work. This isn't original. You're just holding on to something old. So fucking what? Like, I'm looking at one of my bookshelves right now. I have a Ghostbusters. I got Star Wars. I'm pretty sure I've got other things up there. I just can't see it right now because they're good books. I like them. Oh, there's a Transformers book. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with having going and seeing something from your childhood and saying, oh, they're still making stories. Let's see what happens.
One of the best comics in general I have read in the past 5 years has been the IDW Spotlight Cup. Brilliant story. It's beautifully drawn, conveys every aspect of what it tries to do superbly well. It's a story about war and the damage that it can cause to one person, and it's beautifully done. And I don't see how the fact that that's from a Transformers license makes it inferior to something that's quote-unquote original.
He's pushing this creativity angle because he's trying to toot Image's own horn here with the idea of, well, we create original stories. We don't have to rely on building on the works of others in order to create this. When that's just silly in itself, especially pushing The Walking Dead, because it's a frickin' God-blessed zombie story. The Walking Dead is not praised for its originality in zombie stories. It's that it's just a really damn good story.
There is nothing in the world that's original. Everything we make is remixed from other things. We are inspired all the time by everything we read, by everything we see, by everything we hear. To claim that you are superior because you are original is a one true Scotsman fallacy. It's bollocks. And I think that he's trying to kind of get the crowd on his side with this kind of we are all in this together sort of bollocks. Political bollocks is what it is.
And I want to put on record that Image, I think sometime last year, maybe a year before, made a MacGyver comic. So they're not above licensing products. Unless it didn't work out and now they are, but still. You made them. You went out and said, you know what, guys? You know what people want? MacGyver. So all right, let's make a MacGyver comic.
And a lot of this ties into also some of the stuff he says right afterwards, and especially builds on the things he's been saying before about trying to get new audiences. Well, I'm sorry, the licensed stuff is bringing in people into the damn comic shops. The frickin' My Little Pony comic is that damn popular. It's getting kids in there. Adventure Time comics are getting kids in there. And you know what? I don't care if they're reading Spider-Man or Adventure Time, because they're reading comics and they're getting an interest in the medium.
Although we probably should keep them away from Transmetropolitan for a few years.
That's true, but... But you know what?
No, man.
Spider-Man, yes. Spider-Jerusalem, not quite yet.
Get them in the damn store, and this ties into what he says later on. I know it's because he's talking to retailers, but yes, we want comics tied with sold with toys and is sold in frickin' markets. We want them to do that because it gets the comics in their hands and it gets them to read them. It's why we have Free Comic Book Day.
Do you know where I bought my first comics from?
Grocery store.
Grocery
store.
Not quite. There's basically a big news in Rotherham Town Centre where I grew up. That's where I bought my first comics from. For years. I picked them up with the newspapers for my mum.
Yeah, I was actually shocked. I remember picking up, because I still buy toys. Don't judge me.
I still buy toys. I've got 2 cabinets full of the damn thing.
Dude, have you watched my show?
Maybe. Anyway, I bought Trailbreaker / Trail Cutter because they couldn't hold on to the copyright name, and I was actually shocked they came with a comic. I was like, "Oh, yeah. Cool!" So I was like, "That's great to me." Like that seems, if someone buys it, someone reads it, hopefully it'll get them hooked on and they'll go find it again. I know for an absolute fact that obviously the Adventure Time stuff and My Little Pony must be doing magnificent for everyone because Adventure Time has like small spin-offs. My Little Pony has like 4 spin-offs already. IDW just recently picked up the old Cartoon Network shows, and they're doing things with like Dexter's Laboratory and Powerpuff Girls and Samurai Jack. So much in the fact that Boom is going to pick up the new Cartoon Network shows like Regular Show, like Steven Universe, and so on and so forth. So I don't see how this is a negative. It's if it gets like kind of like Cara said, if people get in and they read, win. Like that doesn't seem like a bad thing.
But here's the wrench in the gearworks. What happens if these books based on these licensed properties, they're not well written, they're not well done, they're just kind of half-assed, as is the case with so many licensed products?
That's the problem of the licensed comic, because they should be putting out good material regardless.
Yeah, that's more of a publisher side than I think anything else. If you want to half-ass it, don't be shocked if people don't buy it. Like
plus, how many times have we seen professional comics that are still awful despite people with like 20, 30 years of experience and they're pushing out excrement?
Well, I'm pretty sure that's a show.
Yeah. You have a career built on this.
Yep. Well,
I'm just saying, and just because they're licensed doesn't mean they have some sort of what's the word? Some sort of reservation on telling bad stories.
No,
because the supposedly professional stuff puts out just as much garbage, and do we really want to read Image Comics' litany of horrible trash they've put out in the last 20 years?
Well, so the reason why I bring up. Well, see, the reason why I bring this up is this is a problem that you see a lot in the video game industry. People will go, it used to be the gameplay was designed first, and then the license was built around that. Nowadays, Iron Man 3 is out, we'll make an Iron Man 3 video game, and because it's Iron Man 3, it will sell like hotcakes. So do you think maybe that mentality has kind of burned comic book retailers away from ordering licensed comics?
I see quite a lot of licensed comics in the geek stores around Sheffield. I don't know what it's like over there, but certainly they seem to do pretty well over here.
Well, and here's the other thing about comic stores in general and the direct market. The funny thing about the direct market is I know very few stores that are just selling comics. Because the thing is, comics don't make that much money. They make a good chunk of the money, and people come for the comics, but my local comic book store is called Source Comics and Games because it sells board games, it sells RPG stuff. It has half the damn store is dedicated to like Warhammer and miniatures and trading cards and DVDs and movies and books and lots of other stuff that is also sold, which then gets into licensed stuff because we have licensed toys. We have a little Adventure Time display on one of the end caps, a little Doctor Who end cap, a My Little Pony end cap. You get the idea.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that. A lot of that came after a lot of the crash of the '90s too. Because I did way back when there was just a comic shop where I lived and I could walk to, where 99% they sold was comics. It no longer exists. It closed a long time ago, probably around '96, if I remember correctly. But
I don't doubt that there are still stores out there that just sell comics, but
yeah, but
I think
you look at them
hard-pressed
now.
to find
Every shop now diversifies because that's just the smart way of doing business. You sell one product, that's great, until that product is no longer sellable. So diversify. You always every comic shop now is a comic/game shop, or a comic/toy shop, like one of the other places around here is. And that's just I think that's just the retailers learning, going, yeah, that's just great, but we can also get this kind of people to come in, and we can have this kind of people to come in, and just you want more people coming into your shops all the time. That's
overlapping audiences.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, from what I understand in the UK, that it kind of happened backwards. A lot of the kind of old sci-fi bookshops actually became comic book shops as well.
You guys just like being different.
I know. Well, because the economics of the situation are different, and the way that comics are handled over here are different. I don't know exacts of it. I'd have to go and interrogate my friends at the Sheffield Space Centre, but I can probably find out if I can bother. If I'm lazy.
Okay. So now let's kind of look at what's sort of the last big point here on the speech, and that's it's kind of crystallized in one line here in the speech that I really like. It's so much of the comics experience is about sharing, and Stevenson goes on to talk about how a lot of stores, will have like book signings or book clubs, and how the communal spirit of comics is an integral part of the direct market that I guess he doesn't see being nurtured all that much. So what are your guys' thoughts on that?
He's not wrong.
He's not wrong, but he's ignoring the biggest community there is out there.
That being?
The internet. The internet is so good for communication across vastly disparate groups of people. When it comes to creating communities, it's one of the most effective tools.
And it's the most direct method of feedback on whether or not your book is good or not.
Absolutely. And they're completely ignoring it. And they are not fostering communities on the internet. They are not building up that fan base. They are not kind of developing and nurturing that loyalty among their fans by communicating and feeding back to them. And accepting that what they say might be right. They're kind of forging a path and saying, like, you follow us! And the fans are going, no.
Now, are you saying this as in that's the publisher side of things, or is it the shop side of things?
Both, to a certain extent.
Okay. Because I know my shop does its absolute best to try to have a very welcoming and very wonderful little community they have there. I have another shop that I don't go to anymore that didn't do that. They can eat a dick.
Yeah, when I was working at Twilight Zone Comics, we had sort of that dichotomy. Everyone loved Twilight Zone because we were, very warm, friendly, and open. And then down the road there was Empire Comics, which nobody went to because the guy who ran the store was an asshole.
I've never understood. I'm sorry. It never ceases to amaze me when people open comic book stores and then they just like feel like any customers are just invading their space. It's like, why did you even bother opening a store?
You know what that dichotomy reminded me of the Twilight Zone versus Empire. You ever see that one episode of The Simpsons where Jack Black opens up a comic book store across from the comic book guy?
Yep.
And he's like, "Come in, have fun, free Japanese candy for everyone." I sort of see a lot of comic book stores kind of leaning towards comic book guys mentality, and not a whole lot nowadays towards the Jack Black characters comic book store. Although certainly Twilight Zone and Third Eye are definitely headed in that direction. Have you ever seen a
British comedy called Black Books?
I have not.
Oh my god, I have seen Black Books.
Yeah.
I have never... I've watched the first few episodes of Black Books, and I still don't understand why the hell that guy opened his shop.
Exactly! It needs to be leather bound to match my wallet.
just chain smoking at his desk the whole time. What are you doing here? Get out of here. I want to go take a piss.
Okay. So, do you think that some of the talking specifically about the retailers now? Do you think maybe one of the things that they might try doing is not just promoting having events around like the big superhero events, maybe sort of having events to promote some of the other more diverse stuff, like maybe, I don't know, have like a kids' day for like the My Little Pony and Adventure Time comics. You know,
yes.
have like some
definitely. I keep saying my stop is like a combination of my store and my shop. My
your
store
guy,
does
your
that
dealer,
all the time, and they invite. I think they've invited like the Artist of Fables a few times, and they've done signings and they promoted indie comic artists and writers. And I think it's worked out pretty well for them because they keep doing it.
Yeah, I know a lot of shops they'll always try to try something like that. You'll get like a Friday Night Magic in my shop every so often, where people come in and play Magic, and then their friends show up, and maybe they're not into Magic, but they'll go around and take a look at the shop, see what they have. It's something that is really good, and something that shops should really do more often. The con is that sometimes you can't always get that. You know, maybe you're too far out and someone's not there. Like living here where I am in Southwest San Antonio, and there's a bunch of like artists and writers that live up in Austin. So, you know, they ask nicely and they'll drive down for 40-minute drive, and they'll show up and they'll talk and they'll sign, or they'll talk and sign up the shops in Austin. But not everyone has that, so it's really hard to get that done. So now you have to try to figure out a different way of doing it. So your Facebook pages, they only go so far. So yeah, there should be more physical, more of a community building situation. But the con is that some shops don't have that ability.
Okay. So now, one last thing before we wrap up here, kind of stepping away from the speech itself, and kind of just take a look at the reaction around it. This has gotten a lot of people up in arms, and gotten a lot of people very angry, and a lot of people going, "Yes, preach, Father, preach! You know, send around that offering plate that I might fill it to burst." And I kind of want to look at that response a little bit and why it's been so I guess intense and so divisive. So, Lewis, start with you. Why do you think so many people have gotten up in arms over this speech?
Part of it is the big one that I've seen among a lot of people is the licensed properties not being real thing, and they're pretty much ignoring a lot of the other parts of the speech. But the fact that the licensed stuff, that he's calling it not real, it seems like a slap in the face to not only all the creators who have worked on licensed properties over the last 50 years, but also all the fans who enjoy all this material out there, basically saying what you're reading doesn't matter, so stop reading it and read our stuff.
It seemed like almost not like an attack, but definitely sort of a backhanded slap. I follow some guys from the other shops on Twitter, and some of them who worked like for IDW or worked for Dark Horse, they all kind of said, "Okay, that's odd." Like they were mad, but they were also a little bit confused because it sort of came out of nowhere for them.
Kind of like a "What did I do?"
Yeah, it's like I'm just over here making comics.
Was some of the reaction. Like,
but
Jesus, we earned our place in this industry the same as you, guy. What?
Yeah, and I think a lot of reasons a lot of the other points are sort of ignored is because those are really good points, and they're sort of hard to argue against. So everyone sort of focused on the last part, because the last part did seem to come out of nowhere. And that's my idea, is that everyone sort of is a little bit taken back, because that seemed oddly hurtful. How dare you, Mr. I Created Savage Dragon?
So do you think this is a case of just the well, first off, where's a lot of this vitriol coming from? Is it coming from the readers? Is it coming from the retailers? Is it coming from the creators? Is it coming from the publishers?
The retailers gave him an award, so it's not coming from them.
Mostly readers I've seen.
Mostly readers. Some of the I know a couple of writers, and they were kind of like, well, they weren't really pissed off. They were just kind of, well, fuck that guy. Kind of a reaction. To be fair, most of the writers I know are kind of chilled for the most part, except David McEntee. David McEntee was pretty pissed, but then he is Scottish, so that's kind of his default state.
So I guess another question is if this is a speech that was directed towards the retailers, and maybe to a lesser extent to the publishers. Where's the reader's skin in this game? How does anything that he said affect the reader in the readers in any negative way?
Well, it's hard to put down exactly, but it's basically it's any kind of logic where you're attacking something that they care about and are invested in, and you're saying, well, you don't matter to us because you're not if you're not reading The Walking Dead, then well, who the hell cares?
It's also
they don't care about having that money. They don't care about. I mean, as a in any business which involves customer service, you want to make the customer happy. And if the customer didn't do anything wrong to suddenly get you to piss on them, it's just like, what the hell?
This is also kind of the latest in a line of things like this. There's been a lot of furore about the way that writers and readers have been treated by the industry in general. I think there's certainly on Tumblr and Twitter, there's been a lot of anger directed at a bit more at DC, but at DC and Marvel and the comic book industry in general about the way that they're treating their readers and, treating them as statistics instead of people with actual taste. And
well, DC in particular,
like.
because they seem to have this attitude of okay, we've done this one good thing. Now, how can we do 5 things wrong today?
Yeah, and so I think this just kind of tapped into an awful lot of vitriol that people already kind of have stored up, ready to fling at anything seen as being wrong or hurtful directed towards comic book fans. And this just happened to be one of the trigger points.
So it's kind of just a case of it's almost like a case of just wrong place, wrong time for this kind of speech to be.
Not entirely. I mean, the comments are very wrong-headed, and they are. I mean, okay, maybe he didn't expect it to be plastered all over the website, but that's just naivete. You have to expect in the digital age that if you say a speech like this in front of that many people, it is going to be on a website before you're finished. And if he didn't expect that, then he probably shouldn't be in charge of a company that big. Bad PR is, he's going to Streisand himself right into oblivion if he's not very careful.
The comic industry has always been really bad about their public relations.
Okay, Brian, you've been quiet. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm just trying to figure out exactly, because I don't want to seem like, he's done something terribly and horrible. But he's following sort of the same trade a lot of other companies do. It's promote yourself, get rid of the other guy. Promote yourself, get rid of the other guy. It's like Wendy's attacking Burger King or Jack in the Box attacking anyone, even though they're terrible. But so it seems like another day, another dollar. But this time it sort of came back against him. At least towards the end, it did when he decided, all right, I want to promote our stuff. And then get rid of. And then when he said, "Don't look at these guys," I don't think he actually realized how many fans there were, both inside the industry and outside the industry, of the comics. So it was a backlash that he might have expected, but not expected as large. And then, like I said, I've followed Eric and I've seen him argue on Twitter and on message boards and stuff like that. This is sort of kind of his thing. Like, he'll say something, and he'll be like, that's really smart. Then he'll say something else and be shocked that people are angry. Like, it's just sort of him at this point.
But at the same time, you have to remember that he is a important exec in charge of a very large comic book company, and he's been there for, like, how many years now has he been there?
Was it over 20? Because he was one of the founders.
At this point, if he does not realise that geeks tend to overlap in their geekdoms, he hasn't been paying very close attention. And, you know, he probably should have done the fucking research before he opened his big fat trap.
I mean, yeah, I can't really argue against that. She's kind of got me there.
Okay. So, I guess we're running out of time here, so let's go ahead and start wrapping things up. So, I guess final overall thoughts on Eric Stephenson and this keynote speech. Brian, we'll start with you.
As always, he makes some excellent points, and he kind of goes off the rail at the very end. I think we should obviously try to focus more on what he says to make this industry and this try to make everything better, because honestly we can do so much better, and that's what we should try to focus on. Yeah, he kind of made a dick move. Whatever, that's him. Leave it alone. Let's focus on trying to correct our boat before we end up capsizing.
Okay, Skyblaze?
Agree with Brian in that he does make some very clever and very valid points, and does have some good ideas in there. But then he gets up onto his high horse and rides off into Crazy Town. And, he just completely dive bombs his own speech, which is a fucking shame, because the only thing that people are going to remember about that is the great steaming turd he produced at the end, and not the actual diamonds at the beginning.
Okay, and Linkara?
I know that this is meant to be a speech towards retailers, so of course he's not going to bring up a lot of the points that I brought up in terms of digital and improving the industry, but at the same time, actions speak louder than words. So, okay, your speech is all well and good, a lot of these are good points, and you go off the rails at the end, but then you need to do more to justify the confidence you have in your company. Start actually innovating instead of just pointing at, well, we have The Walking Dead, we have these other well-produced comics that are not as popular, but they're still creative and original. Okay, but if you're talking about advancing the industry as a whole, do more to advance the industry as a whole. Telling good stories is the first step. What's the next step?
Okay, and I think that about sums it all up. So, Linkara, once again, thank you as always for coming on the show. It's always a blast having you on.
No problem. Glad to be here.
And do you have anything coming up that you'd like to promote while you're here in front of the mic?
Right now, I mean, the show is continuing to come out. I'll have a State of the Wall post on my blog soon to announce the next slew of Top of Fourth Wall episodes. The Pokemon Omicron Let's Play continues. History of Power Rangers will hopefully come out in April. Long story there, but for legal reasons, I can't release the History of Power Rangers video until I get the DVDs for the next season. I have all the episodes, but they're from an illegal source. I need a legal, thing to rip from. Long story, I'll explain some other point. And I have my YouTube syndication channel now, so if you want to go and watch old episodes where I wasn't very good, but people still like me anyway, you can check that out at youtube.com/user/REUISU.
Okay.
Oh, and the second DVD's coming out soon.
Okay. Alrighty. Well, once again, Linkara, thank you for being on the show. And that's about all the time that we have for Nerd of the Third Power this week. We'll see you next week. As always, I'm Dr. Gonzo.
I'm Skyblaze.
I'm Brian.
Alright, we'll see you next week. Taka, play us out.